I'm Damien Fowler.
And I'm Eileen Sliffering.
And welcome to this edition of the Current Podcast.
This week, we're excited to sit down with Miranda Abney, Vice President of Consumer Marketing at MilkPEP, the organization behind some of the most iconic milk campaigns out there.
That's right, MilkPEP is the force behind Got Milk. I think everyone remembers that. And Built with Chocolate Milk. Two campaigns that have shaped how generations think about milk.
And they've been making waves again, recently with their You're Gonna Need Milk for That platform, which taps into the world of sports, gaming, and fitness.
Including the epic tie-in with the Olympics and even partnerships in esports.
So today, we're diving into how Miranda and her team are redefining milk for modern audiences. Let's get into it.
Back in late 2022, we here at Team Milk, we really embarked on this multi-year mission to support women in sport and really with a focus on runners and marathon runners in particular. We sort of initially dipped our toe in the waters and we began by sponsoring the female athletes at the major U.S. marathons. And our intent was really that we wanted to sponsor the women running the events and not the events themselves. And over 22 and 2023, we sponsored more than 30,000 women who were participating in these marathons and built this wonderful community of these amazing, strong women. And so when we were getting to the end of 2023 and looking for ways to build upon what we were doing, it just felt like the next natural step was really to build our own event where we could design it exactly how we wanted to and with the input of actual real women who enjoy running.
Tell us more about the documentary that was part of the campaign.
We just premiered a documentary on Every Woman's Marathon. The documentary features 5 amazing women and the journeys that they went on to get to the start line in Savannah, Georgia last year. And their stories are so incredibly inspiring. I believe that people who come and watch the film will walk away thinking that they too can accomplish anything. But we decided to profile a few women who had extraordinary stories and had signed up to train and run in the marathon. And I don't want to give too much away, but it is an emotion evoking, you feel all the feels and then you feel them all again. Just sharing the stories of these incredibly inspiring women. I mean, after you watch the documentary, I hope people will walk away feeling like they can accomplish anything.
Why would women's sports be an important cause for MilkPEP?
Women have always been extremely important to the milk industry. Moms in particular and other women are often in these caretaker roles. And, even as our society has evolved and changed so much in modern years, women are typically still very much the caretakers in the home. And they are generally the ones who are doing the grocery shopping and bringing food and drinks into the house and either encouraging or discouraging consumption of different foods. So from that standpoint, they are our number one target audience. And then in terms of our marathon, and I mean, you can even the name itself, Every Woman's Marathon, our intent was to design an event that was welcoming and inclusive and empowering for every woman, no matter their ability levels, no matter their what kind of shape they're in. We wanted to create something that could bring all of these women together with one common goal and have the best experience possible. And we worked with some really incredibly inspiring women. I'll mention first Amanda Gorman. When we were coming up with our ethos for Every Woman's Marathon, we had some words and we definitely knew what we wanted to say, but we thought it would be amazing to partner with someone who really has a way with words. And Amanda was so lovely to work with because she allowed us to sort of give her our understanding of what we were trying to do and the ethos that we were trying to manifest. And then she really ran with it and composed the most beautiful poem that really was this amazing launch piece for Every Woman's Marathon. And this went live back in January of 2024. And it was such a powerful piece. I can still hear it in my head today, like echoing in my head all the time. It was so wonderful. And I think she presented this like call to action that was basically impossible to miss. And then from there, we partnered with a variety of amazing women with all kinds of different stories. I mean, women who were dealing with MS in their daily life, but still chose to take on this marathon journey. Women who have, been attacked out on runs. Women who are, facing discrimination. Just like we wanted to really share all of these stories and bring all of these women together and show our strength in numbers.
That intersection, as it were, of culture and sports and milk seems, extremely valuable. And was it an obvious choice to kind of champion women in sports?
So we know that milk and physicality have really always gone together. We've been doing a lot of consumer research as long as I've been around, the last 2 decades, where we are tracking attitudes and perceptions and milk consumption and physical activity and all of these things. 365 days a year, we're looking at this stuff. And one thing we see is that the more active you tend to be, the more milk you also tend to drink. It's a really important marker for us. And so it's kind of a natural place to lean in. And, one of the things that has always inspired us is the fact that, milk really, in a sense, was like the original performance drink. I mean, thousands of years ago, when the Greeks and the Romans were first putting on games that eventually became the Olympics, they were consuming milk.
I like that phrase, the original performance drink. That's very, very clever. And then, in more recent times, we've got these brilliant campaigns like Got Milk, which no one can forget. Probably one of the most famous and iconic taglines of any campaign I've heard. So why is it important to keep marketing milk, I guess?
Yeah, so as a marketer, I feel incredibly lucky to work for milk. It's something that I think I can truly feel good about promoting. And I've always been a little bit of a science and nutrition nerd. And, the amount of scientific research about the benefits of milk is really just unparalleled in many other food groups. And I think the real challenge that milk has been facing for the last few decades is really an issue of relevance. The beverage category has been incredibly exciting because there's always a proliferation of new drinks. I mean, just look at the energy category alone. There are so many new energy drinks all of the time. And in the milk category, that was happening as well. And especially like in the last, 2010s, the alt milks were just coming out of everywhere. First it was soy, and then soy almost disappeared. And then we had, almond, oat, pea, like there are just endless things that seem to get milked. So what we set out to do is really to bring dairy milk back and remind people, hey, we're here. We're the original milk and the original deal. And we are the product that all of these alternatives are actually sort of trying to duplicate in terms of both nutrition and taste, enjoyability, all of those things. And so we've been really working to sort of take milk from being like almost wallpaper and keeping it relevant in modern consumers' lives. And I think our whole performance platform has really been our way into getting people to reconsider dairy milk.
I'm curious, was there pressure to reinvent or reintroduce milk to today's younger generations?
Yes, definitely. I think especially in the very crowded beverage space, one of, I think, the really fun things about growing up a little bit when you're young is you start to be able to make some of your own choices in the household, and maybe you're going to make your own snack or choose your breakfast. And we want kids, tweens, teens, all of them to at least consider milk. It's probably a long shot to think that kids will ever say milk is their most favorite drink, but we try really hard to make milk feel like it belongs in their lifestyle, if that makes sense.
Yeah, how do you strike that balance between that inspiration that you were talking about and then education?
Today's consumers, particularly the younger ones, they make our jobs a little bit challenging. They're anti-advertising and they're pro-entertainment. So we really try to strike a balance, and we often refer to it as edutainment, where preferably what they're taking in, they're entertained by, and if we do our jobs right, they're also educated a bit, and either walk away with a message or a feeling, or a new reason to drink more milk. And that's sort of the line that we walk. I think even when I started in advertising a couple of decades ago, we were much more in their face. We were pushing the product front and center all the time. Where's the milk? We need more milk, more time on milk. And it's quite different today. I think younger consumers have just gotten so smart about what is an ad, and they try to avoid them, and there's so many options for content to watch. And so I think if you can grab their attention, you really have to keep them entertained and just try to slide that education in where you can.
How do you decide where to show up?
I mean, it changes a bit year to year. It's one of the things I love about our job is just how dynamic everything is. And there's always new opportunities. In 2024, we engaged our audiences across, various digital platforms, Meta, YouTube, TikTok is a big one, particularly with the younger generation. YouTube just continues to be a place where we will need to invest more with kids. And then, depending, moms and youth are our two target audiences. And so we really just always try to be consumer first, and we go to where they are, try to make it as seamless as possible for their experience.
And what about other channels, new channels? Kids are watching things on Disney Plus, which has an ad tier, or Netflix, which has an ad tier. I'm wondering if that sort of surge of supply, if you like, is an opportunity for you.
Oh, absolutely. We actually were just looking at what our top performing tactics were for youth in 2024, and it's all video. I mean, all they watch is video. That's all they want. So a lot of the connected TV, so Disney, Netflix, Max. We've done some stuff with Max in the last year. So yes, there are endless places to reach your audience, depending on who your priorities are.
If you look back, what was surprising to you about how the campaign was received? What kind of feedback or engagement kind of stood out to you?
Sure. One of the very first things that was a surprise and an absolute delight was there was a creation. So after the marathon launched back in January of last year, very quickly and completely organically, a Facebook group for Every Woman's Marathon surfaced, and there were thousands of women joining it. And I'm not sure exactly who started it, but it was this place where these women from all around the country, and actually 12 other countries, were coming together to talk about their journey to get to Savannah and to, finish that 26.2 mile distance. And so it was just amazing. And it was like, I felt a little bit like I was spying on these women, but it was so cool for me to go into this Facebook group and just see them all talking about the journey and their excitement and their concerns, and just sharing their experience along the way. So that was just so cool and organic to see. I think another amazing finding was that 42% of the women who joined us in Savannah, so of the 7,000, 42% were first-time marathoners. And that to me was such a metric for success because we set out to create a marathon experience that was perfect for first timers, perfect for women who maybe thought they would never be able to run a marathon. And so to have 42% of our registration be from first timers was just incredible.
That's amazing. Yeah. How many women ended up running?
It was around 4,500, which was another learning for us. And honestly, it was super helpful for me to go on the marathon journey as a first timer myself. It wasn't just me. We created this series. We chose 6 women who were first timers to really document and share their journey on social. And when we called it the rookie route. And so when the rookie route content started launching and I was watching these videos of these women and we were all struggling with similar things. And it made me feel like, okay, this is normal. You're going to make it. This is just, a bump in the road. You can do it. You've got this. And so just having that sort of shared journey with these women was so incredible. And I learned so much from it. This year, I'm really excited to not train, but it was great for the first year.
I know those obviously were hard metrics, but were there any softer metrics that you looked for in terms of like sales lift for this like campaign? Was like, how did you go about like measuring that like cultural relevance part of it?
Absolutely. So we've really just sort of wrapped up our 2024 measurement, and the momentum that we're seeing among moms is something that we have not seen in at least the last 2 decades with milk. We are driving like real change in perceptions around milk, especially with moms and women. And we have seen those improved perceptions translate into these women consuming more milk more often. And what we know just from research and experience is that when mom is drinking milk in the household, her children will often mirror that behavior. So it's really kind of a win-win for the whole household. So we've definitely seen impact sort of down the funnel. With sales, it's a little bit challenging for us because we don't have a proper brand. We are trying to move a category forward. But I am thrilled to report that in 2024, dairy milk sales were up 0.8%, which, 0.8, it might not sound like much, but when you think about a $5 billion category, that's a lot of milk. And it's amazing. And we're just thrilled with it.
I've got one more question about, the campaign takeaways. Were there any unexpected, I guess, audience segments who you found engaged with the campaign?
Well, we had quite a few men sign up actually for the marathon and joined us on the journey. And, it was surprising, but I think we built the event and the journey to the event to be inclusive. And, we were happy to have men participate. We asked that they, showed up in an ally sense. But, it was great to have these male allies out on the course running along with the women. It was really cool to see.
Now, I remember about maybe 2 years ago at Cannes Lion when your CEO spoke on a panel about why it's important to invest in women's sports. And at the time, MilkPEP said sponsoring female athletes increase the number of incremental gallons of milk driven by the dollar. So your CEO, Ian Woon-Rani, said that MilkPEP drove 3 gallons per dollar with its sponsorship of female athletes. Where are you guys at today? Are you seeing the same type of investment back in your sponsorship of female athletes?
So just this morning, we looked at these numbers together as a team. And in 2024, our work around female athletes drove 6.8 gallons for every dollar we spent.
Looking back now at like the big picture of that, based off those results, how do you predict this area of women's sports, will it continue to grow in the future? And do you hope, I guess, to still see as much profit from it?
Absolutely. I think it's going to continue to grow. I think it's been a long time coming. And, I think we were well timed and got in just as things were really kind of picking up. And one very rewarding thing that came out of 2024 and the inaugural year of our marathon was that years ago, Nike had a series of marathons for women. And I think they did it for 5 years and then they moved on, and they have not had them for, several years. And that was one of the things we saw. There was this white space in that there was not a single marathon for women in the country. And so we set out to create this marathon, with the input of real women. And coming out of our inaugural event, we saw almost immediately Nike announced a series of women's only running events. And then Lululemon quickly followed with an announcement of some women's running events. And I mean, at least internally, we talked about this, and we were hopeful that the work that we were doing was really sparking these announcements from these two incredible brands. So I'd like to think that we have a bigger impact on the industry at large. And just this morning, I was looking at some of the numbers around spending on women's sports, and in 2024, ad spending more than doubled in women's sport, which is incredible. And I think, it has a lot to do with some of the incredible women out there in the spotlight, Caitlin Clark, just all of the women, Simone Biles, we've just had so many incredible women in the spotlight in the last couple of years. And I think, like I said, it's just been a long time coming. And I'm so glad that I get to really live it.
I wanted to ask you about that, actually. How do you kind of cultivate and approach how do you approach talent and partnerships like the the women you just mentioned when you're looking for cultural icons? How do you go about that?
Well, I learned the hard way early on that the most important thing, and I'm speaking specifically to milk, but it probably applies across the board. If you start with someone who is a true fan of dairy milk and really uses it in their daily life, it makes everything else so much easier and whatever output that much stronger. So we really do start with authentic milk drinkers at the core of it. You have to really be engaged with dairy milk to be part of our campaigns. And
that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. So you ask them off the bat, hey, do you drink milk?
Yes. And it's funny that the answers you get, and a lot of people tend to say yes, really quickly. And so we do dig in a little bit on it. The follow-up questions are, well, what's your favorite type of milk? How do you consume it? So we really do dig in on that.
Yeah, on that note, consumer identity is playing a big role today in food and beverage choices. How do you tap into values like wellness, sustainability without alienating different audiences? Is there basically such a thing as milk for everyone, or as you say, people have such different preferences these days?
Yeah, I think that is one of the great things about milk. I think, I know there's a small percentage of the population who is actually allergic to milk and dairy products. And for them, they should definitely not consume dairy. But for other folks, particularly in these more modern times, there are some great options. A lot of our milk companies have developed lactose-free and value-added milks that, they don't have the lactose that can cause sensitivity and tummy issues. A lot of them are adding protein, calcium, other things to just increase the nutrient package even more. So I truly think there is a milk for everyone, and we really try to communicate that by delivering tailored messages to the right audience. Because we are focused on the USA, and there are, many segments with many diverse interests in this country, and we want to recognize and respect that. But we think, milk has these 13 essential nutrients and, really unparalleled functional benefits compared to almost any other food or beverage. So it's, milk gives us a lot to work with.
Speaking of looking to the future, in terms of innovation, which we talk about a lot in marketing, how do you think about it in the category as established as milk?
Yeah, I think it's been interesting. I think there's a bit of a return to some of the experiential stuff. We were talking this morning about this idea of third places, and I think especially when it comes to Gen Z, they are often feeling a bit isolated, especially after COVID and living through that, and oftentimes they're seeking this kind of third place. Where they can, sort of establish a community and be surrounded by their peers. And so I think that's a really interesting place to play nowadays. I think all of the storytelling mediums, the TikToks, the YouTubes, there's just so many ways to get your story out there now. Influencers are incredibly powerful for us, particularly with those younger generations. I think we saw that it's Gen Z typically trusts information they hear from an influencer they follow more than any true news outlet or doctors or other sort of health practitioners. So the power of the right influencer is amazing. In our youth efforts, we have a big footprint in the gaming space. We're trying to reach 70 million youth every day, and that is not an easy task, especially with a declining budget. And gaming is a space where you can reach 98% of youth, girls and boys equally. And of course it is, somewhat disparate in the actual gaming space. But I think finding that commonality across, kids as young as 9 and as old as 17 is a really great in for marketers.
So what's one marketing rule you would love to break?
Oh, I break it all the time. I think it's a little bit of that sort of leading with efficiency only, or taking measurement to an extreme. I think truly good marketing is a balance of art and science. And, I believe a good marketer has to trust their own gut to some degree. And I think it's that balance of directionally, I know how these different things are performing, but the art of it is how can I make it that much more impactful through the creative storytelling or the casting or whatever it may be.
What brand outside of dairy do you admire right now and why?
I look to Liquid Death for a lot of inspiration. I think they are so interesting in everything they do, and even just their sort of initial insight that these sort of rock stars or A-list athletes who are holding whatever can of whatever soda or energy drink, those people are not actually consuming those drinks because they have to take care of their bodies. And I think that creating this vessel for water that sort of mimics a beer or an energy drink, but it's actually just water, I think is so brilliant. And I think the way that they really push the envelope with their advertising is really inspiring. I read once that they look for sort of a 50-50 split in response to anything that they put out into the market. So their goal is to have kind of 50% of people actually really love it, and then 50% of people to be completely offended or pissed off about it. And I don't know. I just think there's so much sort of freedom in that, and I think their work is just genius.
Really, yeah. They're unafraid. Next
Yes.
question. What's your favorite milk moment in pop culture?
Oh my gosh. So a recent one, Nicole Kidman was accepting an award for Baby Girl. I can't remember exactly which award it was, but when she came up to the podium, she had a glass of milk with her and she chugged it right there on the spot. And it got picked up by a million different news sources. And, everybody was texting me, is this you? Did you do this? And it was just so iconic. So that was definitely a favorite recent incident.
Amazing. And what do you think the dairy category will look like in, say, 10 years?
Well, it's an interesting question. I think it hasn't changed much. At least the milk category has not changed much in the 18 years that I've been working on it. I think it's part of the challenge that we have taken on is really reinventing something that has sort of stayed the same. But again, it kind of goes back to that like OG performance drink. Like this drink has been around forever and it's so powerful in its nutrient content. And imagine milk didn't exist and then suddenly it was invented. Like everybody would be going crazy for this, nutrient packed 13 nutrient drink. So that's sort of the approach that we've taken is really just getting people to take a new look at it. But the milk category may look kind of the same in 10 years.
Wait, are you sure you had nothing to do with the Nicole Kidman moment, honestly?
No, I wish I could take credit for it. I wish I could. That was all her as far as I know.
Okay, finally, one more question for you. Almond, oat, or whole milk in your coffee? Or do you just drink it straight?
Oh, no. I'm a whole milk girl all the way.
And that's it for this edition of The Current Podcast.
This series is produced by Molten Heart. The Current Podcast theme is by Love and Caliber. The Current team includes Kat Fessy and Sydney Cairns.
And remember,
preferably what they're taking in, they're entertained by, and if we do our jobs right, they're also educated a bit.
I'm Damien.
And I'm Elise, and we'll see you next time.